Hello students. Small cheer and great welcome to today's session. This session deals with first topic of third unit, emulsion, surface tension, oil in water and water in oil emulsion, hydrophilic and lipophilic balance, HLB. Okay students, let's get into today's session. In today's session we are going to see about the relation between surface chemistry of food emulsifiers and their types. Then compare the relation between surface tension and the chemical action of surfactants. And construct the functional role of the classified food emulsifiers based on the HLB values and relate their stability. Next, judge the performance of emulsifier based on hydrophilic and lipophilic balance, HLB. Let's see about the relation between surface tension and the chemical action of surfactants. The physical state of ingredients in food systems has the following dispersion: true solution, colloidal dispersion, emulsion, foam, gel, and that will be dispersed in two different phases. Continuous phase, dispersed phase, may be solid, liquid, or gas. Let's see about this one by one. True solution, it is a solution where there is a dispersion of particle less than 1 nanometer in liquid. Examples: sugar, lactose, minerals, and vitamins. Colloidal dispersion, SOL, in this type there is a dispersion of particle sizes between 10 to 100 nanometer in liquid. Common colloids, dispersion of proteins, large molecular salts. Example: milk. Emulsion, a liquid dispersed in another liquid with which it is usually immiscible, incapable of being mixed. Foam, gas is dispersed in liquid or semi-liquid. It requires a third component possessing protective or stabilizing properties to maintain the dispersion. Example: whipped topping. Gel, semi-solid state with two continuous phases. Continuous phase of interconnected particles and or macromolecules intermingled with a continuous phase of liquid phase such as water. Example: jelly, jam. This table shows the different types of dispersion. If the dispersed phase is solid, S, and continuous phase is liquid, L, then the name of dispersion is solution or colloidal dispersion and the example is milk. If the dispersed phase is liquid, L, and continuous phase is liquid, L, then the name of dispersion is emulsion and the example is French dressing. If the dispersed phase is gas, G, and continuous phase is liquid, L, then the name of dispersion is foam and the example is whipped topping. If the dispersed phase is gas, G, and continuous phase is solid, S, then the name of dispersion is solid foam and the example is foam candy. If the dispersed phase is solid, S, and continuous phase is gas, G, then the name of dispersion is solid aerosol and the example is smoke for flavoring food. This picture shows the destabilization of the oil and water dispersion. Initially the oil molecule react with water molecule. Then aggregation of oil molecule takes place. After that all oil molecule combine together and form a layer above water surface. But there is no complete dispersion of water and oil molecule. Emulsion. Before we see about emulsion, let's see some important terms. Colloid, a type of homogeneous mixture in which the dispersed particles do not settle out. Examples: butter, milk, smoke, fog, ink, paint. Immiscible, immiscibility is the property where two substances are not capable of combining to form a homogeneous mixture. The components are said to be immiscible. In contrast, fluids that do mix together are called miscible. Components of an immiscible mixture will separate from each other. The less dense fluid will rise to the top, the more dense component will sink. Immiscible examples: oil and water are immiscible liquids. In contrast, alcohol and water are completely miscible. In any proportion, alcohol and water will mix to form a homogeneous solution. Let's see definition for an emulsion. It is a colloid of two or more immiscible liquids where one liquid contains a dispersion of the other liquids. It is a special type of mixture made by combining two liquids that normally don't mix. Emulsion is a Latin word meaning to milk, that is fat and water. The process of turning a liquid mixture into an emulsion is called emulsification. This picture shows the dispersion of two phases with emulsifier and without emulsifier. There are three parts to an emulsion. The dispersed or discontinuous phase, usually oil. The dispersion or continuous phase, most likely water-based. An emulsifier, which is a stabilizing compound that helps keep one phase dispersed in the other. Types of emulsions. Temporary emulsion. In an emulsion, the collection and rising of the lighter phase, usually oil, to the top of the mixture. Example, creaming is a process that achieves temporary emulsion status. Stabilizers may be added to an emulsion to decrease the tendency of the emulsion to separate, which creates a viscosity similar to soft yogurt. This is referred to as a semi-permanent emulsion. Permanent emulsions are very viscous and stable, to the point that they do not separate. This picture shows different types of emulsion. Oil in water emulsion or oil droplets in water, which can be found in ice cream and/or milk. Water in oil emulsion or water droplets in oil, found in butter and margarine. Water in oil and water type emulsion or water dispersed within oil droplets of O/W type emulsion. Oil and water in oil type. These multiple type emulsions make low-calorie items such as cream which contain less oil, but also stabilize the emulsion by dissolving the unstable substance present in the deepest region of water droplets. Taste can also be enhanced by injecting seasonings and flavors into the water droplets. Let's see one practical example, that is butter. Butter is made from the cream of milk. During agitation of milk, the phospholipid layer surrounding the fat molecule breaks. Then the bigger molecule converted into smaller molecule called fat globulus. This fat molecule undergone churning process and forms butter. The remaining liquid formed during this process is called buttermilk. Emulsifiers definition. Substance which reduce surface tension at the interface of two normally immiscible phases, allowing them to mix and form an emulsion. It belonged to general class of compound called surface active agents or surfactants. FSSAI standards for emulsifiers. Food safety and standards, food products standards and food additives, regulations, 2011 describe emulsifying agents and stabilizing agents as substances which when added to food, are capable of facilitating a uniform dispersion of oils and fats in aqueous media or vice versa, and or stabilizing such emulsions and include the agents specified. Examples for emulsifier are: egg yolk and mayonnaise is an example for oil and water mixtures and the emulsifying agent involved is lecithin. Crema on espresso is an example for water in oil emulsion. Butter is an example for water in fat emulsion. Emulsifier structure. This figure shows the emulsifier structure. Emulsifier used to reduce surface tension between two immiscible phases by their molecular structure. That is amphiphilic or, hydrophobic or, lipophobic head. And hydrophilic or, lipophilic tail. Lipophilic tails composed of C16, longer fatty acid molecules. Polar head groups consists of non-ionic functional groups. Now let's see some examples for emulsifier and their structure. First one is chemical structure of lecithin molecule, that shows the hydrophobic head and hydrophilic tail. Similarly for monoglycerides and diglycerides. And this is the chemical structure of sorbitan and tween-60. The amino acids with polar side chains such as serine and glutamic acid can interact, hydrogen bonding, with water molecules. There are also those that don't such as leucine, valine, and phenylalanine. They have non-polar side chains and so they only interact strongly with non-polar substances such as oil and air, van der Waals interactions. B-casein has most of the polar residues on one end and the non-polar residues on the other. This is like one giant soap anion whose non-polar tail interacts with the air fat phase and whose head group interacts with the water. The air bubbles may not coalesce due to repulsions of the negatively charged head groups. The emulsifiers used in ice cream today are mono and diglycerides and polysorbate 80. The proteins in ice cream can be seen to interact with each phase and shows how complex the structure of ice cream really is. How does emulsifier work? The presence of both regions on the emulsifier molecule allows them to orient themselves at the phase interface and lower the interfacial energy that leads to instability. Emulsifiers stabilize emulsions by means of monomolecular interfacial films and also by formation of steric and/or electrical barriers that prevent coalescence of the dispersed droplets. This figure shows oil in water and water in oil emulsion. First image is water in oil emulsion, where the hydrophilic head of emulsifier bind together with water molecule and face towards center, whereas lipophilic tail of emulsifier bind with oil molecule so it is facing outside of droplet, thereby it results in stable emulsion. Second image is oil in water emulsion, where the hydrophilic head of emulsifier bind together with water molecule and face towards outside, whereas lipophilic tail of emulsifier bind with oil molecule so it is facing inside of droplet, thereby it results in stable emulsion. This figure also shows oil in water and water in oil emulsion mechanism. This figure shows the mechanism of stabilization emulsion formed. Interface between fine droplets and base liquid in emulsion is usually very activated and unstable. Therefore, the state of emulsion is unstable. The droplets in the emulsion easily get together forming larger droplets, and finally, two separated liquid phases are formed. To prevent such deterioration of the emulsion, a surfactant, emulsifier, having both hydrophilic and lipophilic characteristics is added in the liquids. The emulsifier added in the emulsion presence on the interface of the two liquid phases and stabilizes the droplets. Temperature control is an important technique for determining the quality of the emulsion when a surfactant is used. Since the surfactant temperature ought to be controlled for the surfactant to dissolve in a liquid phase, a temperature profile control during and/or after processing affects stability of the emulsion in some case. Important properties of emulsifier are: amphiphilic group, hydrophilic head, lipophilic tail. HLB value. Micelle. Solubilization. Let's see about HLB value. Full form of HLB is hydrophilic and lipophilic balance. That is the balance between hydrophilicity and lipophilicity among emulsifiers. The HLB value usually lies in the range 0 to 20. That is for high lipophilicity emulsifier the HLB value is very low, HLB less than 9. For high hydrophilicity emulsifier the HLB value is very high, HLB greater than 11. For intermediate or amphiphilic emulsifier the HLB value lies in the range of 9 to 11. The behaviors and functions of emulsifier to water depend on HLB. An emulsifier consists of hydrophilic, water-soluble, part and lipophilic, oil-soluble, part. When an emulsifier is added to a mixture of water and oil, the emulsifier is arranged on the interface, anchoring its hydrophilic part into water and its lipophilic part into oil. On the interface of water in air or oil in air, emulsifiers are arranged, reducing interfacial tension of them and making them easy to be mixed. In other words, the force to separate the oil and water turns weaker, ending up with oil and water easily get emulsified. HLB. The hydrophilicity and lipophilicity are different among emulsifiers, and the balance between these is called HLB value, which ranges from 0 to 20. An emulsifier with high lipophilicity scores a low HLB value, while other emulsifier with high hydrophilicity scores high HLB value. The behaviors and functions to water depend on HLB. Not all compounds composed of hydrophilic and lipophilic can be used as emulsifiers. If hydrophilicity in a compound is greater than lipophilicity in it, the compound will disperse into water, while one with greater lipophilicity than hydrophilicity will disperse into oil. When the hydrophilicity and lipophilicity are well balanced, the emulsifier exhibits sufficient effects. Let's see about another important property of emulsifier, micelle. Because an emulsifier has two opposite parts, hydrophilic part and lipophilic part, its solution doesn't turn to a simple aqueous solution but a colloidal solution, whose properties greatly vary depending on its concentration. In an extremely diluted solution, there is no special change, but the emulsifiers gather on the interface and the surface tension is reduced as its concentration gets greater. As the concentration gets higher, a uniform monomolecular layer is made on the surface and the surface tension drops to the minimum. Formation of micelle is caused by assembling of excess molecules, within which lipophilic parts face to the center, and surface tension won't show any change. The point of concentration at which micelles start to form is called critical micelle concentration, CMC. The properties of the solution change greatly when it reaches CMC. Similar changes happen on the interface of oil and water when their interfacial tension reaches CMC. When the concentration exceeds CMC, spherical micelles appear and disperse into water. With increasing of concentration, rod-shaped micelle will be formed. Finally, lamellar micelles with higher structures called liquid crystal are produced. Next property of emulsifier is solubilization. When a small amount of insoluble substance is incorporated in an emulsifier micelle, semi-transparent solution is produced. This phenomenon is called solubilization. Solid monoglyceride has a large capacity of crystallization which affects its performance. It also makes a liquid crystal which has intermediate characteristics between solid crystal and liquid. The form varies with the kind of emulsifier, temperature, and its concentration. In practical use, it is necessary to select a suitable emulsifier based on conditions such as temperature and food constituents. The point is how an emulsifier binds with water and disperses in it, but it is difficult to predict the results based on equation. In actual use, to predict the results based on the empirical rules and information about emulsifier is desirable. Functions of emulsifier are: to promote emulsion stability, stabilize aerated systems and control agglomeration of fat globules. To modify texture, shelf life, and rheological properties by complexing with starch and protein components. To improve the texture of fat-based foods by controlling the polymorphism of fats. Modifies oil crystal and prevents water spattering in cooking. Destroys emulsion to stabilize foam and to make smooth texture in ice cream, and keeps its shape. Reacts with proteins to make a smooth easy rising dough in bread. Acts on starch to make bread soft. When fats and oils form into crystal, an emulsifier promotes and inhibits the growth which prevents the formation of abnormal crystal. This function is utilized for margarine, shortening and chocolate. Application of emulsifier. The use of food emulsifier began with adding monoglyceride and lecithin to margarine. Originally, these substances were only known as emulsifiers. However, as studies progressed, more functions were found and they began to be used in various fields, such as bread, ice cream, and cake. Nowadays, emulsifiers are applied to Japanese foods like tofu and minced fish products. Why do bread and tofu need emulsifiers? Generally speaking, an emulsifier is well known for its emulsifying effects. However, actually it has various functions and followings are just some examples. Modifies oil crystal and prevents water spattering in cooking. Destroys emulsion to stabilize foam and to make smooth texture in ice cream, and keeps its shape. Reacts with proteins to make a smooth easy rising dough in bread. Acts on starch to make bread soft. Action on starch. Fresh bread is soft, but it becomes elastic and hardens over time. Starch particles consist of spherical-shaped amylopectin and amylose. Raw starch called beta starch is insoluble in water. But when heated to a certain temperature, the starch absorbs water and changes into the crystalline form of alpha starch. Amylose gets hard easily with cooling and amylopectin becomes hard gradually with time. The immediate hardening of bread by cooling is mainly due to the change of amylose. Amylose changes to a helix structure, a kind of spiral structure by heating. If monoglycerides are introduced, they can be anchored into the helix structure. Since the anchoring does not change even after cooling, softness is maintained. This function is also utilized for instant mashed potatoes, noodles, and rice. Action on protein. Wheat flour contains protein called gluten which takes the shape of a mesh-like structure when mixed with water. This wheat flour and water-based dough is filled with carbon dioxide produced by fermentation and steam generated during baking, which produces raised bread. When the gluten content is small, the dough only rises a little. An emulsifier modifies gluten molecules and enhances its film-forming power, resulting in good spreadability and improvement of working efficiency. Thus, easy rising bread can be obtained. Action on oils and fats. When fats and oils form into crystal, an emulsifier promotes and inhibits the growth, which prevents the formation of abnormal crystal. This function is utilized for margarine, shortening and chocolate. FSSAI regulations. Emulsifying or stabilizing cannot be used in foods unless the emulsifying or stabilizing agent is specifically permitted. Some emulsifying or stabilizing agents are not permitted to be used in milk and cream, and these are as follows: monoglycerides or diglycerides of fatty acids, synthetic lecithin, propylene glycol stearate, propylene glycol alginate, methyl ethyl cellulose, sodium carboxymethyl cellulose, stearyl tartaric acid, esters of monoglycerides and diglycerides of fatty acids, monostearin sodium sulfoacetate, sorbate and esters of fatty acids or in combination. Okay students. That's all about today's session. Thank you.